Hi there. In this Microsoft Excel video, we'll look at printing our spreadsheets. So generally the goal of printing a spreadsheet is to get it to fit on a 8.5 by 11 page. So if I look at File, Print, I'll see a preview of this document. It's presently being printed on letter, which is 8.5 by 11. Right now we're looking at centimeters is our units. So 21.59 is 8.5. And if I look down here, I see that it's page 1 of 4. So this document should fit on 2 pages. But since it's a little bit wide, if you look at page 3, it's just printing 1 column off to the right. And then page 2, 1 column. So if I were to print this, I'd have to tape those sheets together to see the entire spreadsheet, which would be less than elegant. So we'll take a look at a few things we can do to get this spreadsheet to fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. And 8.5 to 11 is good because that's what fits in a binder, which can easily fit on a shelf. Also, it'll fit nicely in a filing cabinet without having to fold it. Legal size also fits into a filing cabinet. So if you only need your spreadsheets to fit into a filing cabinet, you can also go legal as well. So presently, since I went to File, Print, I get this little dotted line that indicates the edge of the page. That's the print area. You can barely see it there, but so what I generally do is go to a narrower font. That's the first thing I'll try. I don't want to shrink everything, so I want to make it very readable, but I'll just go to a narrower font, and then I'll auto-fit my columns to fit that narrower font. So I'm just going to select all of my columns using the column names, and I'm going to choose, if you click on Home and look at your font selections here, you'll notice one of them right out of the gates here, I have this agency. That's very narrow. Notice how much space I have left in those columns. Also, there's one called Arial Narrow, which isn't quite as narrow as agency, but it's also narrower than Calibri, which is what we were using previously. I'm going to go to agency because that's super narrow. Notice how much space I have left. So I'm just going to auto-fit all of those. Since I have all of the columns selected, I clicked and dragged across the column names. If I double click between the columns, they'll all auto fit to the contents, basically the widest content. And you'll notice that now I have lots of room on my page. So if I go to File, Print, I only have 2 pages now. So that's great. There's also some other options to get your material to fit onto a page. If the narrow font doesn't do it, I'm just going to quickly go back to Calibri and Autofit. So again, it no longer fits on a page. Let's choose File, Print, and show you. Actually, just auto-fitting actually made it fit on a page, so that fits. But another option we have is to go to File, Print, and we can change our orientation to be, instead of portrait, landscape. So that's the wider size. And most things could easily fit on landscape. And again, if you only need to get your spreadsheet into a filing cabinet, you can go with legal landscape, and then even a wider spreadsheet than this will easily fit onto a printed page. And you should only have a couple of pages and no pages with just 1 column on them, again, which is clunky. I'm going to go back to letter, back to portrait, and notice I only have 2 pages. Now, if I go back, one thing you'll notice that when we get to the second page, so on the first page we have an indication of what this data is, right? Salespeople, item. But if I go to the second page, there's no indication of what this stuff is. We'd have to go back to the previous page, and if we had multiple pages, we'd have to go all the way back to the first page to see what the heck we were looking at. So we have an option to repeat these rows on additional pages. So I'm going to go back using my little back arrow back to the document, and I'm going to go to page layout. This is where we find a lot of different options. So under print titles, when you choose print titles, it opens up this page setup dialog. You can also access this page setup dialog with this little button here. And I'm going to choose rows to repeat. So I click on that little arrow there, we get a little, basically a cell picker, and I'm going to choose row 1 and 2. You could just type in $1:2 if you like to use code. And once you're happy with that, you can just close this. You'll get back at your dialog. It pops that in. And if I choose print preview, I can see this right from this dialog. Jumps right into my print preview. And notice if I go to my page 2, we now have row 1 and 2 repeating at the top, which is very elegant. So let's go back here. I'm going to go back to page layout. There's a couple of other things that I really like in this page layout. If we go to margins, another option to, again, if you're having a little bit of difficulty getting everything to fit onto a page, is to narrow your margins. So it used to be that we needed at least 1/2 inch between the edge of the page, which is about 1 centimeter. Narrow will also do that. I could just use narrow margins. So they already have a preset, or you can go into margins, custom margins, and you can actually type in, for example, 1 centimeter. This should fit. So if I don't need 1.9 here, I can put in just 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter. I'll just add 1 centimeter all the way around. 0.6 of a centimeter makes me a little nervous. And I'll choose OK. We can choose to look at the preview now as well while we're here. You notice we have a little bit more room for our material. So I'll go back. And also under the margins, custom margins here, we also have center on page. So it gives you a little indication of what that'll look like. We don't have to go to the preview for that. It'll just center the material on the page, which is something I like to do as well. Makes it a little bit more elegant. The second page sometimes looks a little funny when it's halfway down, so sometimes I won't center vertically for that reason, so that the top of the page is still at the top of the page, even if we don't have material to fill the page. We also have headers and footers. Now, headers and footers are per sheet. So I have the sales sheet selected right now. So this will only affect the sales sheet. We have to go to each individual sheet in our workbook and choose headers and footers. And now I'm not going to actually add any material myself. I'm going to add some code to get information about this document and then display it in the header and footer. So what I like to put into the document is basically the file path. So frequently, especially when you're working with a team, there'll be more than one person working with a spreadsheet, so it helps to indicate when you share this document via printing or a PDF, it helps to show where this document actually resides on the local area network, so people can find it and get themselves a copy or manipulate it. So under custom header, I'm going to choose this little option here. So this will give you the file name and the file path, and I always put that at the top of the page. And I choose OK. For the footer, I always say the authoring information, so I'll say last updated by my name, and then on the right section I'll add the date. The time, sometimes if you're updating every minute and people are looking at every minute, you might want to add the time as well, but I'm just going to add the date. Choose OK, and it gives you a little indication of what that'll look like. So we presently have rows repeating at the top. We have headers and footers, which give us some information about the spreadsheet. And we have this narrow margins, and everything fits on a page, and it's all centered. And I'll choose OK, and let's take a look at what this actually looks like. So it looks pretty good. Because of the narrow margins, however, we get this overlap. So you might want to increase your margins maybe to 1.8. It's giving us a margin of 1, which includes the header and footer. So if I go back to page setup, notice I get back to my dialog right from the print preview here. I can go back to header and footer. Back to margins, and I'm going to make the top and bottom, I'm going to add an additional 0.8 for the header and footer. And I'll choose OK. And now you see we have room for those headers and footers. So everything fits width-wise on 8.5/11, so we don't have any orphaned columns. We have a nice title and rows repeating at the top, giving the user the indication of what this data is for. Now, generally, it's actually rare that I actually print these documents to paper. Instead, I'll save them to PDF. So notice we have a save as Adobe PDF. Now I have Adobe CC installed, so my program may work a little differently than yours, but generally, if you don't have Adobe CC installed, Office will be able to create a PDF for you. So I'm going to choose it, save as Adobe PDF. It asks me what sheets I want to use. I'm going to use sales. So just the selected sheets, but you do have the option of choosing all sheets if you choose entire workbook. I don't want to add this stuff because basically we just use this data in that sheet. So this is just the data that we use in that sheet, so I don't need to print that. And notice we also have this fit to paper width. So that'll also, what that does is it actually shrinks everything down to fit. So this is also this option here under scaling. Generally, I don't like to do that because it makes it unreadable. So I'll choose convert to PDF. And I'll say yes. I'm just going to call this example 1 because I already have an example there. And here's my PDF here. So again, rare that I actually print to paper these days. Generally, we want to share an electronic copy via a text message or social media messaging or what have you. And this is what the actual document will look like when it's printed to paper as well. So that's basically printing an Excel spreadsheet and various useful options. Thanks so much for watching.